Hi, I'd like to welcome all on behalf of Continuity and Resilience to the webinar on Resilient Leadership for COVID-19 times. Our today's speaker is Neena Chatrath. She's the founder of Enhanced Consulting, a boutique leadership consulting firm based in New Delhi, India. She has over 20 years of experience of business and consulting. She focuses on impact of succession planning and of leadership on business performance, organization building, and management of talent. She was she was part of global leadership consulting team in global search firms and worked as senior partner in Heidrick and Struggles and earlier Korn Ferry International. I'd like to bring on Nina now. Nina, all yours.
Thank you so much, Tarun. And it's great to be on this platform, which has been provided by Continuity and Resilience. I am called a leadership consultant. And that's a phrase at times people ask me, who's a leadership consultant? So anything and everything that comes in the way of leadership, any obstacle that the organization faces in terms of leadership, are those obstacles that I sought for people. It could be in their systems and processes, it could be in their people, it could be in their teams, it could be in attitudes, behaviors. Today, as we talk, we're all facing a huge crisis. Everyone's talking about it. And if I were to take you through a structured presentation over the next few minutes, this is what it would look like. I'm just trying to get to move my presentation ahead. Yes. So today we are faced, how I'm going to structure my 1 hour with you is going to be along these lines. What are we facing today? The current context. All of us are familiar with it. All of us are living through it. There are no surprises here. We're all very much in the middle of it. And therefore, resilience seems to be a word that seems to be coming up again and again. Resilience in terms of leadership. So I think a little bit of focus on what is resilience? What is the objective view of resilience? And what are people looking for in individuals, in leaders? And how are organizations showing that resilience is also something that I will spend a little bit of time on. And therefore, the next part of my session would really address what are organizations doing differently. We've seen this before. We've gone through challenging times, before. There are many different kind of challenges we faced. Maybe not something as monumental as this, but how are organizations coping with the change, and what are they likely to do differently as we walk ahead in the future? And therefore, it stands to reason, what should I be doing differently? What should Nina be doing differently? What should Tarun be doing differently? What should each one of you should be doing differently? All of us are who are in somewhere in our professional career and moving ahead. How should we look at this, times that we find ourselves and equip ourselves? So this is going to be the flow of my session. I would really look forward to some of the questions that you're going to ask me as we go along. And for the next 40 minutes, I would be taking you through this. I'm just going to take you through some of the current context slides. We're living differently. We're existing differently. We're wearing masks. We're standing apart. We are everybody. Nobody is spared. Each and every one of us is going through this. You can't say so-and-so has not gone through it. So it's a universal phenomena that's there, that's in existence today. There are many other things that are coming up, anxiety as professionals, anxiety as fathers, as mothers, as children, as anxiety for your parents. So there's a very different kind of anxiety that's playing out. And anxiety is also manifesting itself in very different ways in each one of us. So I think we're also running towards solutions of diet, solutions of lifestyle, solutions of living by yourself, solitary, etc. There are things that are being done. Something is working for someone, something is not working for someone. At the same time, there are so many people, there are forces out there which are trying to retrieve the situation. They're finding good ways to get a good turnaround. And there are many things that are being discussed. People do not have the luxury to sit back. They're working very hard towards a green recovery, as they call it, a healthy and green recovery. But what is clearly evident to all of us is that this will reshape our world, which we're hearing again and again. And we also do not know. The end of the tunnel seems to be near, but we still do not know how long this crisis will last. And we're very confident of one thing, and that's being told to us over and over again, that the world will be very different. And if the world would look very different, what does that mean for us, right? So the second part of my session is about resilience. What is resilience? Do we need to redefine it? Resilience is you just Google resilience, you will know what resilience is. But how does it impact you in today's time? How are people, if I thought I was resilient, am I still being seen as resilient today? If the leaders are being looked upon as, do they have the resilience? Is the definition changing? So what is resilience in us and in the organization? And this requires a little bit of a deep dive. I'm talking about talent. I'm talking about future talent. What is being said today is that we always talked about agility. We talked about agility in people, ability to run faster, ability to be more agile, ability to look at things from different perspectives. But it's not just agility, it's digital savviness, and it's also entrepreneurial. These are the three things that are again and again hitting us with all the organizations that we talk to. And they say it's not neither or, either or, it is all of the above. So what are organizations looking out for? People should be optimistic. They're looking at a lot of positivity. They're looking at resilience. And they're also looking at people who can navigate through the ambiguity. There's ambiguity everywhere. There's chaos everywhere in the way we function, the way we live, the way we exist, the way we work. And there is a constant change. But are we being able to navigate? That's also an aspect of resilience. And today, talent is being asked, where can you take this? It could be a function you're leading. It could be a role that you're addressing. It could be an organization that you're heading. But where can you take us? And what is your view? In all the VUCA world that we're getting familiar with in sharp clarity, we're still saying, you need to have a point. What is your view 3 to 5 years down the road? So you're not getting a role, you're not getting a framed out role and you go and sit inside the thing and warm a seat, but talent is being looked at very differently. Individual resilience in leaders is being defined, as I said, from a point of view of, are you agile? Are you also inclusive? At the heart of this pandemic, Organizations are talking a lot about being care, extending care to their people. I know hundreds of instances where care has been extended to professionals who are working for the organizations. I even know organizations which have decided to send laptops to professionals, not for themselves, but for their children. That's another aspect of care. Accessibility of leaders is being looked at very sharply. Even though you're not physically accessible, are you accessible on the phone? Are you accessible digitally? And your ability to respond in quick time is also important. In the world that we are not being able to forge communication or connections from a face-to-face point of view, are there methods and modes of communication that are being reached out to you, regardless of the role you're in, regardless of the organization that you worked in? I think that's important. Recently, I was there in a plant in one of the states of India, which is a little remote. And over there, I realized that you could be remote, but they're not remote at all, because the way strongly they are connected to both their corporate office and their global organization is a case study in itself. So while they may be geographically remote, they're very well connected to their leaders, and the leaders are very accessible to them. And that is what we're seeing in leaders, which they ought to be showing. Purpose is at the core of it. The organization and the employees are asking, what is it that we're doing? Is there purpose that is stating our vision? And purposeful leadership is at the core. People are looking forward to people with a clear vision for the future, purpose-led. And how are you able to communicate it? What modes and methods are you using? So there's a huge ask for the leaders today. If we were to take a step back and say, how is the organizational resilience being proven? And multiple organizations that we are connected with are all saying that people who got and started working, they got on the pedal on multiple fronts are the ones who are being able to accelerate to recovery. There have been many organizations, and being large is not determining whether you're being able to run faster. Having the right set of vision or a short-term mission, and then working on it is really making organizations accelerate to recovery. So we see very focused efficiency measures in organizations. To give you a sense, I mentioned 4 in my slide. Are you optimizing your reward spends? Are you reviewing your operational models? Are you addressing process of efficiency? And are you also investing in the right talent? And the definition of the right talent is being redefined in organizations. So organizations which are also looking at the future, utilizing this time, regrouping, coming together, redefining some of the ways in which they work, are the ones which will accelerate to recovery. And therefore, what does that mean for the organization? Some of the things that we find with organizations is that you're hiring for today, but you're also doing very conscious hiring for the future. So you're looking at the talent and saying, lest there be another challenging time, is this talent going to be able to handle it? This is also the time when organizations, they may be having care for their employees at the core of their heart, but they're also right sizing in more ways than one. They're restructuring their workforces. They're looking at their workforces and saying, how can we make this look different? How can we be differently structured to work more efficiently? As we all know, digital trends are right here. We have no leeway here. We need to be digitally savvy. I cannot go back to my IT people all the time and say, you know what, I can't address this and I can't do this meeting on Microsoft Teams. I may be getting support and guidance and direction, but I need to be digitally savvy. And I cannot afford not to understand the new ways of working. I cannot wait and watch and say, let the world recover, let us go back to normal, and then I will connect with people. There are different ways of functioning. There are different ways of working. Not everybody is being able to cope with it, but we've all found our own formulas of coping with it. But when you look at it from the organization point of view, they're also typecasting and creating some different talent profiles. They're saying, what is the kind of talent profile that we need? Conversations are beginning to happen. Which is the tribe of people I'm sorry. Can I be heard? Hello?
Sina, loud and clear.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I got a little distracted. Yeah, I'm sorry. So even when you look at, like I was talking about the talent profiles, conversations are beginning to happen there. And we're still struggling to find what is the core of this. If we're looking at different talent profiles, like I said, agility, being digitally savvy, being entrepreneurial, what can you do? What can you create? And we're also looking at a host of other things. But more importantly, we're looking at talent that is succeeding regardless of the challenging times. I think there was a point of time for 3 to 4 months when organizations were in a bit of a stupor, but as they've gotten off it and as they have moved ahead in the future, talent profiles are being looked at very clearly in the face of disruptive leadership and in the face of very disruptive business models. Organizations are creating business models which have been disruptive and which are holding the test of time today. And it remains to be seen whether tomorrow they will hold the test of time and maybe they'll morph differently. But today we have organizations clearly with so many months down, we know which are the organizations that are surviving and which are the ones which are thriving and which are the ones which are already going in a mode where there is a control on their business models. So it's a good thing to say that you plan ahead beyond the crisis. It's very difficult when you're in the middle of the crisis. But having said that, organizations are beginning to reflect and they're looking forward to what lies tomorrow. And therefore, there is a model that is gaining a lot of ground. It's a McKenzie framework. It's not a new framework. It's not. It was, I think, created in 2015, and we've had many versions of it. It talks about a double helix. There is one helix, and there's a second helix that goes around it. The constant helix, the helix on the inside, talks about a very resilient and a very reliable and a very efficient, stable backbone. And if you note that the stable backbone in itself is also got a lot of resilience in it. And I'm going to go back and later in some of my slides, I'm going to help you understand when we're talking about the backbone, a stable backbone, what does it mean in terms of a talent and in terms of individuals? And as an organization, the second helix that goes around it is the dynamic capability of the organization to do something fast in an adaptive way. And organizations which are large are also being able to do nimble, short, helix-like formations, which is addressing the market today. Case in point, your sales models, your distribution models, your operational efficiency that's being driven remotely, your automation, some of the technologies they've got into it. These are all dynamic capabilities that are being built at the top of the single helix, which is your stable backbone. And so therefore, we're talking about how can an organization develop agility along with stability. So you remain agile, which is your cover. And in agility, there are a lot of experiments that are happening. And the stability is defined as your core expertise, your functional and your technical expertise, which is your core. So not only are you safeguarding your core expertise and you're strengthening your stable backbone, you're also creating a helix on top, which brings out circles of being dynamic and being capable and looking at things in a more adaptive way. And you're also experimenting a lot. If something is not working, you're able to go back dynamically and deconstruct it and construct something else, which may work sharply for the future. And therefore, at this point of time, I am going to stop for a minute. And we have 3 poll questions that we would be giving to you. And I'd like to engage you and help myself to understand where are you coming from. And if I were to go into what the organizations are doing differently, I'd like to know what is it that you have been a part of. So I think over to you, Tarun. We've got 3 questions, poll questions, and we would solicit your participation in that.
We would request all to participate, please.
So at this point of time, I see about 28% of you have said yes. And the question here is, has your organization run a leader identification program? We've got a fairly decent, I mean, almost one third, 28% saying yes. Equivalent number is saying no. And we've got about 35% of the people who are saying not sure. Maybe they've not been involved, or they probably do not have an oversight to a leader identification program. And we have about 10% saying that planned in the future. And and while we have 10% people saying it's planned for the future who are probably in the know of it, there is organizations are doing far more to make this happen. And I'm sure the not sure people, the 35%, the largest percentage here, would also be involved in it. But having said that, we've got almost 10 plus 28%. So we're looking at a 38% of the people here who have polled are saying that yes, and planned in the future. And this is exactly the way the trends that we're finding today. Tarun, can I ask you to run the second question, please? Tarun, we're still seeing the results of the first question. Yeah, thank you. Right. So have you been involved in identifying leaders across the levels of an organization? We have 28% of you saying yes. We have 33% saying no. And we have a minuscule percent, 3% saying you will not be interested to participate in such a program. And then we have a very good percentage of 38% saying would like to participate in such a program. Now, there are two aspects of this question. One is that have you been involved in? You could be involved in from an HR capacity or from an organizational capacity. And if you have been involved in identifying leaders, or you could also be involved in as a participant. And I'd like to, my next set of slides will take you through both of it. As an organization and as an individual, what does it mean to be a part of a initiative that helps you identify leaders across the levels of an organization? The one or two things that I'd like to state for this poll and why I put this poll question here is that, and testimonies and the number of people who said that they would like to participate in such a program. One is that as an employee, as a talent, I'd like to be involved in something because then it shows me my career progression, number one. Number two, as an organization, you're showing progressiveness if you're relooking at the way in which you identify leaders in an organization, which some of the companies are doing. And therefore, it stands to reason that there is something in it for the organization and there's also something in it for the individual. And therefore, this is a very important aspect, and we will be addressing that as we go forward. Thank you for your responses. And Tarun, could you now look at the third question? Yes, thank you, Tarun. Thank you, participants. Okay, I see a resounding yes. 82% of you are saying that you will be able to differentiate performance from potential of an employee, which is a great number. 15% say not sure, and I think one amongst you saying not possible, which is also fair. You've got your point of view here. Today, why I put this question here is because we have a classical definition of performance, which we measure through performance management system. That is not in conversation at all. That's, I think everybody has a very, very clear idea of that. Potential today is being revisited. Potential earlier said your ability to perform out in the future, and you can win even when you don't know all the details of your role. And that's where we use potential. Potential very often were also seen as people who were rebellious, were challenging the status quo and experimented, etc. Now, today, we've also added a host of things to potential, which is about resilience and which is about making sure that you stay right there and keep fighting the war rather than eject. Potential is going to be looked at very differently. The basic definition of potential remains the same. Yes, of course. What is the potential in you to perform? But the specific parameters of potential may undergo a shift, not a drastic change, but a shift. Thank you, Tarun. I think I'll go back to my presentation now. And thank you for these answers. That gives me a very good understanding. Could we remove the poll sheet? Yes, okay. So now I have the next half time of my presentation I want to dedicate on what are the organizations doing differently. And some of you may be familiar with some of these things, but how are we doing it differently today as opposed to what we did earlier? Yes. Talent reviews, some of the organizations take it very seriously, but we are now doing talent reviews with a difference. Like I said, that we're looking at talent from different lenses. And there's a reintroduction of the review process. I think some of the organizations did it very, very strongly for a few years, and they gave it up. And today we're finding organizations coming back and talking and having very, very robust discussions around saying, should we institute this talent review process? Which is that, does the organization have a complete clarity on the composite skill sets of people that we have in our organization? If we were to tweak our business model, do we have the skill sets within an organization? So a complete and total talent review. And this is then gets redefined saying, we have an organizational view of talent as opposed to a functional view of talent. So there are times we are adding all the functional views and taking it to the top and saying, as an organization, this is the talent that you have. And that is requiring us to do a lot of talent review workshops, sitting with direct managers and actually going one by one on each individual. And we're going beyond the performance management system. The performance management system today, unless you re-engineered it for today, is not being able to capture the real matrices of performance today. And I'm giving you a case in point, illustrative numbers. If we were to put 500 people into the 9 box, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the performance and potential, on which I have a spin, you will also be able to look at what we're talking about. The initial slotting is happening, but we're also now doing recalibration and moving them to different slots. And therefore, it stands to reason that once again, the 8 to 10% ratio is being looked at very strongly by companies saying, if we were to have 500 managers, are we being able to find 50 people who can be part of the leadership pipeline? Now, to move ahead, you're familiar, hopefully you'll be familiar with this 3x3 matrix, which is companies perform. I mean, they use it very, very assiduously. It helps. Now, I'm going to very quickly take you through 1, 2, and 3. So 1 and 2, of course, are people, which come on this side of the bell curve and they don't make the cut in the organization. An inconsistent performer in this box 3 can still be worked upon. Number 6 is a tough one because number 6, we always try and look for our future leaders and say, are they in the wrong role? Are they in the wrong place? And try and put them into another role and try and see if they can work in that. Number 2, when we talk about solid professional, if you were to look at this one line saying lower performer, and then we look at solid professional and high professional, this is the classical specialization piece. This is the classical piece where we get people who peck away in a certain specialization and keep honing their skills on a certain technical or a functional aspect. But as you move towards the middle rung and the corner potential, high potential, which is low, medium, high potential, low, medium, high in performance. And if you look at this third rung, we're looking at people who have high potential, diamond in the rough, who may not necessarily has been able to show their potential. Future star is clearly there, can adapt to the new norms of working. And as we look at 9, it's a consistent star. And if I were to go back to the middle rung, we're talking about 3, which I said is inconsistent performer. 5 is a key performer, but still needs to prove going forward. And at 7, we are talking about a high professional plus. And this is something that I wanted to spend a little time on, but the spin on it is what is in the next slide, which is back to your professional is looking at the backbone that we talked about, dynamic, having a stable backbone and having dynamic capabilities. So when we look at the talent, we're slotting people with the stable backbone on this side. So the lower performer is not in consideration, but a solid backbone to a very strong backbone. Herein, we're looking at people who are sharpening their technical and functioning skills. In the helix model of the organization, they're inside the core. And for them, it's incumbent on them today, from an organizational standpoint, to keep on pecking away, making sure that they remain the strong backbone and get the functional and get the technical expertise, as opposed to just relying on your team, and making sure that you as an individual are being called out and are capable of being the backbone. And that's the difference today that we're finding. In the middle, we find people who are moving towards being high potential. And on this side, we are finding people who are the dynamic challengers. And on top, we find 9, we said stable plus plus and dynamic plus plus, which is the star that we're looking at. As you move ahead to the next line, these are definitions. I'm happy to share this box with you, but these definitions are being relooked at as we look at this in the backdrop of backbone and dynamic. How do we now marry the two? So you're looking at dynamic capability and you're looking at stable backbone. This is the point that we were trying to make. And therefore, at this point of time, before I go back to potential, which is, I think 83% of you had mentioned that you're comfortable with the definition of potential, but how do we define potential? I have a slide here which takes you very clearly saying, is your DNA right to begin with? Is the right material, raw material there? And these we kind of gauge through different tests and techniques and assessments. And then the second part becomes very critical, the competency building experiences. If I have been in roles which have actually shaken up my status quo thinking, I'm likely to be a dynamic thinker. I'm likely to challenge things because I have other viewpoints. And if I have gone to my boss and taken feedback, more I have done work around my development, I'm likely to have the competency building experiences. So the raw material to begin with, the competency building experiences, and couple that with my ability to be agile, which is now going to be the ability and willingness to learn from experiences, is really today. And if we were to look at COVID, what has been my ability and willingness to learn from this dynamic experience is critical. And this is what is defining potential today. So, like I said, the core of potential remains the same, but we're still looking and redefining this in a different way and bringing in this accelerated learning that we've had during COVID times to also weigh in on our learning agility, which is right here for you. As we move ahead, this is nothing but some work that we've done. And as you can see that in an organization over here, we're finding very few stars, but this kind of talks to our 10% where we're saying, yeah, a little bit of stable, but more so dynamic capability, but we're finding a lot of stable people, which will talk to the inner helix, which are specialization people. And now we're looking at these And as we move ahead from our ask of the one in the right in the middle square, where it starts from James, this is a square where we have expectations that they can either move to a high professional plus, which is stable plus plus, or they can move towards the dynamic piece. And these are the ones, the developmental experiences that they gather around themselves would define which way they go. And as I move ahead, um, we're talking about today's scenario and how we are making this happen. So I'm just taking a case in point, one of the organizations that we're working with currently. So how are you doing the assessments of those 50 selected people? Discussions with their managers, getting feedback, one-on-one interviews, and at every stage there's validation. Every stage there's validation. What have you learned from experience? What are the experiences that you got? How did you come back? How did you show resilience? All of that is all based on experiential learning. And how do you put it into play? How do you bring it to bear at work? And therein we are bringing in a host of things. As you know, we bring in aggregate data points and put it together and make a holistic report. And today's leaders assessment then gives us a graph. Either we can do a 3x3, or we can do it from a readiness standpoint and a leadership gap standpoint. We do a scatter diagram, and we get organizations to take a call on which way they're going. And there are times when age is not really featuring anywhere. I could be 32 years of age, and there could be someone far senior in age perspective reporting into me. But since I've been a dynamic leader and I've been able to take charge, organizations are quite comfortable putting that person at the helm of affairs. So what should I be doing? That's the last part. If I were in an organization and I want to move squarely up into the 9 box, which is stable plus plus and dynamic plus plus star, consistent star, regardless of the situation that I am, I'm always delivering results, I'm always showing performance. So how do I develop myself to go there? I think oftentimes when we design the development planning approach, we feel that the baton is in your hand. And it's been proven again and again. I am responsible for my own development. And therefore, the engagement is happening at the I level. Engagement is happening at the organizational level, but at the same time, engagement is happening at the I level. And then the workshops that are being done is more to decloud, to dehaze, to create clarity in what you need to do. And the questions are all yours. I would like to move ahead. Tell me, what should I do? And how can you help me? And all the conversations are happening towards that. The individual development performance plans are being made and they're being beefed up. And we are also putting in some different things. If I'm a high performer and I'm a high potential and I'm sitting in 9, then do I have enough challenging work on my table to justify my role in the organization becomes critical. Alongside, there are sample reports. All this may look very interesting and jargony, but actually it's very real. And people are marking out areas where they need to work, identifying 2 areas where they need to continuously work, 2 areas where they need to fill in the gaps, and how do we make that happen? So very candid conversations, very constructive conversations with individuals who are racing ahead, and organizations are allowing for that space to happen. And as we move ahead, it's a very, very old formula, but it's working today. Learning from experiences, learning from trainings, and learning from others. Today's session is really about concept clarity, learning from training, which is 10%. But unless I learn from others, unless I come back and call up Nina, call up Tarun, call up core, continuity and resilience and say, you know what, this is what I'm struggling with, how do I do it? Which is about conversations, and then going back there and applying at your workplace and seeking assignments that make you apply that is what's going to get you the development happen, which is really the underpinning of the design philosophy that we have. And this is just a sample, but the workshops are being designed in such a way, again, like I would say, the baton is in your hand and you make it happen. And how do you, whatever you learn, whatever you communicate it constantly to people. Today, there's no such thing as over communication. I think everybody is over communicating, which is the way to be. We can't afford to be quiet sitting in a workshop. Our participation, our being there, our imbibing, our learning, and our giving back to our organization is key to people being learners. And I'd like to end this with saying that on the 14th of January, we're planning on a one-day leadership training, and I would invite some of you, most of you, all of you to come and participate in that and get more details on this area as we talk. So that's all for me, and I look forward to questions. Um I look forward to, I'm happy to share more case studies of the work that we're doing. And I look, Tarun, over to you. And thank you so much. Uh, it's been a very one-sided monologue, and now I'm looking forward to engage with you.
Hi all. So you can share your questions in the chat below, and Nina would be, happy to answer any questions or queries that you might have. Fahim, do you need a checklist on organizational resilience or, the employee side of organizational resilience? If you could, let us know that.
I'm sorry?
There's a question which they want a checklist on resilience. I'm just asking, do they want org resilience or the employee side of org resilience? Nina, do we have a white paper or some write up on, org resilience, what we've shared today?
We could draft one and send, yes, for sure.
Fine, we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, we do have some case studies where we are trying to map organization resilience.
Sure. Everybody enjoyed the session, Nina. It was very informative. That's the feedback we're getting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The topic was interesting. A lot of information.
Thank you.
There's a question that says, do you have maturity assessment criteria for organization resilience?
It's being developed. Yes, there is a model that is under development, and we do not have enough data today. And I think it's a great question because, yeah, that's the way we're going to go. The leadership maturity and as measured on specific criteria, and we're taking it 1 to 5.
Sure.
And I think post-COVID, we've learned a lot. So I think there'll be a lot of data, and I think this is something that the work is already underway. Tarun, if there are no more questions, I have something that I could possibly spend a little bit of time on.
I've just posted a question. I'm not sure whether you have seen it or not, but maybe if you could maybe look into it.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you ask me the question since you
Okay, fine. Thank you. So basically, see, it's obvious that in any group of people or in any segment of staff, not everybody will be in the high performing bracket. No, it's natural that there will be some people who will not be there.
Sure.
And so the rate of growth or the speed of growth or the acceleration to some will be faster and the others will be slower, and that naturally causes a lot of dissonance among the staff. It's but natural that two people joining at the same time in the organization will not reach at the same end after 5 years, 10 years. Their growth plans will be different, their path will be different, and there is some dissonance which is created out of it, whether it could be perception based, it could be factual based, it could be policy changes which happen during a long period of time which somehow become unfavorable to few and favorable to others, many reasons. So how do you handle the dissonance? So there is a natural dissonance which happens when a group of people are working for a long period of time. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so this is a very good question. So number one, when we're doing a talent review exercise, we address every single employee of the organization. And we don't say, let's do selective X number of people. We will address everybody. And in an organization, we recently did some work. So they're saying the organization is too big, there are too many people. So we went into function by function. Let's do function by function. And the whole idea of doing function by function is that there are times when we find diamond in the rough. And you're right. There are times when you're stuck in the wrong role. Your qualifications and your experience doesn't talk to the role that you're currently doing. And then we find those people and we surface them up. And obviously dissonance happens because there are times when you stick onto an organization not realizing that you've deviated from your path. And therefore talent review actually helps us clear some of those areas. And we are able to create paths for everybody. Every employee today is an asset. And if you're not being able to get those opportunities or assignments, then like we said, the development is in your hand, your career progression is also in your hands. And therefore, while we have workshops, all the layers are cut out. It's us with the organization people. And there are times when, in those conversations, a lot of dissonance. I think the people are upset, they're angry. But, when we talk to them, they try and reason it out. We try and logically work through solutions. And then many companies, we've been able to find some fabulous solutions. We've created leaders on the go, we've created it, but we have to draw people out. We can't, it's no longer enough to sit on your desk and not communicate what you have done well. And it's never been enough, actually. So there are two sets of people, very generally speaking. One set of people who do not do as much but communicate a lot. And the one set of people who do a lot but are unable to communicate. So I'm saying over here, the need is about being able to communicate. And today you're in a forum where you can hide and communicate, right? Digitally, you can communicate. In the other one, they're being found out. So as consultants, when we do these talent reviews, we go in depth into each individual. Why is the person not moved at the same rate of pace as the others? Somebody will race ahead, for sure, but they've also challenged themselves. They've also probably taken on challenging assignments. Have you had an opportunity in the area that you're in? I'll give you an example. Recently, we were doing we were working and we found the indirect tax pool of people to be the most high potential, and we just couldn't find a rationale for it. You're an indirect tax, and how do you have the potential? And that's why we force the organization to look at that pool of people and say, what can we do for this pool of people? And the organization themselves were really taken aback. They said, but you know what? They do what they do. And we at times don't even understand what they do. But they were all high potential people. So we actually worked with those 16 people and we went deeper. And we actually created lines of career for them, which went beyond tax. So the organization at times is serving its own purpose. I'm being very honest. I'm being very direct. But is the individual's purpose being served in this? And even when we talk to the individuals, some of them who were the real high potential, they say, we're very happy here. So the point is that how are you willing to challenge yourself? And if you are willing to challenge yourself, to what extent? And are you willing to change your status quo? There are times when 2 people out of the 16 people, we were not able to crack. They were good. They were very good. They said, no, we're very happy where we are. We'll be the part of the stable backbone. We'll continue to be where we are. We do not want any change. We left them alone after a while. We persevered for a while. But not everybody wants to move ahead. So everyone's, as you're rightly saying, everyone's career goes in a different path. But if you want a strong trajectory, do you have the capability to make that strong trajectory happen? And are you willing to struggle and sacrifice and build those capabilities to make that strong trajectory? That's the real question today. And therefore, at times we find, like I said, age has no significance today.
So basically, it's that it's the level of commitment that the individual is able to
Yes.
Deploy, and in turn the organization is also able to draw out. So
Yes.
if the organization
Absolutely.
puts the efforts to draw it out, good for
Absolutely.
both. And sometimes it does not work out, then fine. But at least the attempt should be made. Otherwise, like many diamonds in the rough just remain as diamonds in the rough. Nobody polishes them. Yeah, okay.
And to be honest, at times it suits the organization to keep them in diamond in the rough. The work is going on, right? There's another organization we worked with. We worked with another organization recently, and over there we came across a very unique problem. We had people who kept going above to the next role, next role, next role, but the role over here and the role over here was not very different. And at the top, we had a change of leadership. And they said that, can you find us 4 people who can be leaders amongst this pack of 100? Although everybody was just slightly bit different from the other because everyone had done different roles, their geographies changed, but the work didn't change very much. So they all had very similar experiences. It was very, very challenging to us to find. And everybody had sort of gone into a comfort zone. It suited the organization, suited the people, but suddenly you had a change of leadership. It got acquired. And they said, no, now you find us the front runners out of all these 100 people. It was a big challenge for us, but we persevered and we persevered. And then we had to draw out on their willingness to make the last trajectory happen in their career. And then people put their hands up. They were willing to go the extra mile, and the others were comfortable with them going the extra mile. And then it was a longish project for a very simple ask. But
we have a few relevant questions, pretty relevant. Which is better to follow, agility or resilience for an organization?
Well, both. Both. They're both equally important. Yeah.
Cite example, a short example for both.
Yeah. So unity, if I'm hearing you right, unity is collaboration, right?
No, agility and
sorry, agility and
resilience for an organization.
So agility is what I need to show, right? And organizational resilience also need agile people. So these are both complementing each other. Organizations are also on an agility path. Organizations are being very dynamic.
Correct. And individual needs to be dynamic, which actually is subset of agility itself.
Absolutely.
Now,
and some people are and some people are not, which is fine. So you could be part of the stable, but there's a huge ask of the stable and there's a huge ask of the agility.
Correct. How to stay optimistic when people around you are not that much optimistic? Sometimes you run into conflict within yourself, whether you're right or people around you are right.
I couldn't agree with you more. I often run into it very often myself. There are times when people say, will you stop smiling? There's nothing to smile. Well, actually, it's also a mental makeup of a person. I'm seeing that in COVID times, some very supposedly strong people are not optimistic at all. They're very pessimistic for whatever reason that they may have. But I think you have to be optimistic. I don't think we have a choice today, right? And optimism, if you're optimistic vis-a-vis yourself, then you're likely to be an optimistic person and you're not putting on a show in the organization. And these are times when we even ran a workshop with the leaders of an organization, because the leaders of the organization, when we did an employee survey, all the employees came back and said that our leaders are not optimistic. And actually this happened. And then when we ran a workshop with the leaders, they asked us, what is there to be optimistic? It doesn't matter. In these chaotic times, you have to keep on painting a picture. You have to show a future. You have to believe in the future far more, because they're looking at you for you to direct them out of this abyss that we find ourselves in. And I think a lot of times, I'll give you where optimism is also coming from, which was my learning in that session, was that if you are pecking away and doing something constructive and not letting go and saying, okay, this is not work, now let's do this. Now this is not work, let's do this. That in itself gives you a lot of optimism. You're trying, you're endeavoring, you're pushing, you're stretching, but you're not just sitting back. You're not in a fright syndrome and saying, you know what, there's nothing I can do. I'm just a mere one person in the organization.
There's one from talent acquisition team. In companies, while hiring dynamic pluses, and what do they have to focus and get sure those are potentials, not only performers? What's your advice to them?
So I think at that stage, at consistent 9, you're also performing over and over again. Because you have high potential, you land up performing in different places in challenging times, in peace times, and war times, and all kind of times. And therefore, we find that when you're doing a stable plus dynamic, look for capabilities in them being dynamic, but heightened dynamic behavior also leads to, at times, destructiveness. And therefore, we actually watch out for that. So in a stable plus plus and dynamic plus plus, you need to look at consistent superlative performance over time, regardless of the environment they're in. And having said that, their personal capability on dynamic shouldn't be off the charts. Because a lot of times when your change agility is extremely high, you'll end up deconstructing more than constructing. And also, when you are employing at that level and you're finding those shooting stars, do understand that these are shooting stars. If you do not deploy them right, they shoot. They either shoot out of the organization or they shoot somebody in the organization. They're also very, very likely to be rebellious people. So their deployment has to be very critical.
Nina, Dr. Karim Fahmi would like to ask you a question in an audible format. Go ahead, Dr. Karim. I think you're
Am I
on mute.
audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question which is mainly related to the COVID-19 era, which is more or less having the disruption that we have seen across the globe sectors. And I'm coming from a banking sector background, risk management in specific. We have seen the level of evolution that was obliged by COVID-19 times. And even it turns to be the very chaotic, even the comfort zone for all of the world sectors has changed. So which means, in other words, that the evolution of seeding up leaders, the parameters of seeding leaders will change. Because even the priorities of all sectors have already changed, the level of selection have already changed, the skill sets even for seeding juniors, middle management has changed. What do you advise in this era? Because the fast-moving changes of this crisis is still happening, and we are not yet settled with the priorities that we can see of seeding up, including ourselves, because as I mentioned, the evolution even for our comfort zone have already changed. The level of virtual channels, as we have seen our meeting today, is a good example of how things have changed massively in the last 9 to 10 months. How can you give an advice now for such sectors in order to make the evolution even, I would not say surpassing, but to match with the level of massive changes that has happened? So thank you.
No, that's a very, very good question. And I can only speak from my experience of working with the organizations today. We're finding that the organizations that are actually attacking change at multiple levels are the ones which are accelerating to recovery. And if they think that they can do a parallel process, they can do a serial processing, that's not working. So let me address the business, then let me address the operation, then let me address the governance, then let me address the people. So if you're going to go serial wise, that is what is really taking a lot of time. And you may not get the answers. And therefore, as you very rightly say, this change on multiple aspects. But we're creating core teams to address every single aspect. So in some companies, maybe the operational excellence part, the change management is being successful, but the business is not happy. And therefore, it has to be addressed at all levels. We found that one of the companies that we were working with, and it's actually a case study, and I would hopefully share that case study with all the participants here on the call, hopefully, with their permission, is that they were in the logistics business and they didn't have the luxury to sit back. Day one lockdown in India, they were on the roads, and regardless of whatever was going on. And it was much later that they realized that since they had addressed the change aspect in the business model, change aspects in their operational efficiencies, the way they work, our operational model as well, in their people and in their systems and processes, and all four fronts, without realizing at that point of time that they're consciously doing it, they managed to do it. And therefore, they actually today have raced ahead and they've captured the market that a lot of other logistics companies have lost. So I know it's a very huge ask, it's a very difficult ask, but how can you create core teams, populate it with the right people, and make that happen, and let these teams talk to each other. See the interconnects that you have with each other. And therefore, today we're talking talent review. I thought talent review used to come right at the end. Companies are putting it back on their head and saying, if we have the right set of people and we get them in for the future, we're sorted. But even getting the right set of people is not enough. Your processes have to address them and how you kind of deploy them right and how they can function right. And the business, you can't take your eye off the business. The business models are very disruptive. And in the middle of all this, we've got IT, which is now really stretching itself and coming up with new things. Like you rightly say, we never thought this way of communicating is at all possible, and that too in huge numbers. It's happening. So everybody is being stretched. And along with it is coming, we're seeing a lot of burnouts. I would have never imagined that if you're sitting in your house, in the comfort of your house, and you're being fed and you're being taken care of, that there are burnouts. But there are burnouts, real burnouts. People are not letting their eyes off the screen for 12 hours, 14 hours, which is clearly not desirable. So change has to be addressed at every level. We're at times which is really once in a lifetime, or not even so. So therefore, how quickly you can regroup and how quickly you can come together is really the case. And you can't be on a snail's pace. Everything is on fifth gear. That's what we are watching. And those are the companies that are actually thriving today. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but
yes, very much. Very much. Very well. Thank you so much.
So that brings us to the end of the session. We would like to thank everyone for participating. Generally sessions are one way where, the speaker speaks and people do not interact. But this has been a very interactive session. If I would request everyone to switch on your cameras, please. Nina, can you stop sharing the screen? We'll have everybody's cameras on.
Sure. I do what?
You have stopped it, so we cannot on it.
I think it should allow you.
Yeah, maybe. Let me try again.
That's such a great idea, Tarun.
So Harsha Shastri from Tech Mahindra would like to give an applause. He has really enjoyed the session. And a big round of applause to Nina for, a brilliant session. So let's give it to her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great to see you all.
We would like you to, go to our YouTube channel. You'll find a lot of these webinars and interactive sessions there. Everybody can go there, subscribe, look at those videos, send us please, and we shall be more than happy to share it with you. Thank you all for your wonderful time, and you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.